When Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine on February 24th, 2022, the Kyiv Independent was just a 3-month-old startup. A year later, it is an internationally recognized media outlet that has been growing as a company as it has been living through and covering the many horrors of this war.
As the Kyiv Independent, we became very successful for a very sad reason.
In the before life, I had some aspirations, friends, boyfriends I wasn't happy with, and stuff like that. And now it doesn't matter.
Right now we are seeing that a lot of war crimes are happening, and it's pretty, I don't know, at least for me it's evident that the human rights law system which is in place right now, it's very vulnerable, and it doesn't really work. It doesn't prevent, these war crimes, which is what it was supposed to be doing.
There's one thing reading about it, right? And the other thing is just seeing the bodies or seeing the destroyed houses. I think that's something that unfortunately every Ukrainian now has to see, because it will definitely change their life. But because this is happening, you have to see it, because that's how you understand what's actually going on the ground.
February 23rd, 2022, seemed almost like an ordinary day in Kyiv. Russia's invasion of the eastern Donbass region had been going for nearly 8 years. The tensions were increasing, and all the signs of the looming all-out war were on the table. Still, until the very last moment, many Ukrainians didn't believe that Russia would start a full-scale invasion.
23rd of February. I was at work.
The day before was really all work.
There was a lot of news coming from the West. Blinken and President Joe Biden were saying that Russia is about to invade. We were working extra hours, actually till 2 a.m. on the 24th from the office.
I think that was also the day when we published an editorial calling on the road to support Ukraine, and that ended up being the editorial that Ursula von der Leyen cited in the European Parliament several days later.
There's a good photo when we're leaving the office. It's 2:30 on February 24th.
And then when we were each heading to our separate taxis, Toma turned back and told me, "I hope I'll see you tomorrow." The next time we saw each other was actually 2 months later.
Around 5, I woke up to explosions and I was shit.
For me, the war hit when Putin began his speech. Everybody knew what's going to happen already. He starts talking, I pick up my phone, I call my dad, and I tell him, "Dad, war." And after the speech, I hear 2 explosions. That's Russia beginning to attack Kyiv.
The first thing I did, I called my mom, who lives in Bucha, and to check on her.
I picked up the phone and I started calling my mom, who lives in central Ukraine, but kind of close to eastern Ukraine. And I was very worried about her because I thought they're gonna try to move quickly to her city. And I woke her up and I just screamed that she and her husband have to get in the car and just head west. Just get in the car right now and head west. And they of course didn't do that. She didn't listen to me. She just told me to calm down.
Around 6 a.m. when the subway opens, I packed everything. I went to my dad's place and we took a car and we went to my grandma's place so that all my family members, all my loved ones were in one spot, and then we can decide what to do next.
I was to finish the opinion piece for Washington Post. I messaged the editor of the Washington Post opinion section saying, I guess I have to delay. I have to push the deadline a little bit because it seems that the full-scale invasion has started. And he was like, yes, sure, are you all right? And as he was asking whether I am all right, Russia's missile landed just next to my building. The walls shook. The first thing I did, I just rushed to the balcony. I saw this gray mushroom-shaped smoke. There was an ambulance trying to reach the area and couldn't because there was a huge traffic jam already out of the cars that were trying to leave. So I walked.
I get a call from her that she is basically walking on foot from Kyiv Oblast to Kyiv. So we pick her up and bring her to my grandma's place. And from there, the two of us start writing news. Our news feed is regularly updated every 10 minutes.
I started calling Darina Shevchenko, who's the CEO of the Kyiv Independent, but also one of my best friends. And she slept through probably a dozen phone calls from me, and she woke up hours later.
I slept very well. I didn't wake up to the sounds of explosions.
So far we hear some explosions from the window.
The first message I got open was from Ola saying, when the f*** are you going to wake up? And that's how my February 24th started.
How are you going to react on your daily life? How are you going to sort of rebuild your daily life around potential danger, potential shellings and stuff like that is a whole different story.
During the last hour I haven't heard explosions. So far some people in Kyiv are trying to escape, but in shops there were lots of people trying to buy some food. Now it's a bit less, and also they were trying to withdraw money from ATM machines.
We went to the metro. The problem with the metro is at the time, it was hard to work there, and I had to make a choice, right? Working or taking shelter.
For the first 2-3 days, I didn't sleep at all because we had a 24/7 news feed, and we were constantly working, updating stuff, and the adrenaline basically kept me going.
The first weekend of the invasion, if I'm not wrong, it was on the 27th. There was like a 3-day curfew. If people would go out, they would be shot because there was a lot of saboteurs around. There was a lot of rumors of Russian groups being in the city and stuff like that. So it was safer to be in this flat. So at the time we had in my flat we had Igor and Asami. I think the first weekend Asami slept on 3 days. I think she might have slept 12 hours, which was insane. It was just a very small microcosmos dedicated to work basically in the corridor.
During the first weeks of Russia's all-out war, life in Ukraine, even far from the front lines, changed drastically.
The situation in our shops, more or less, there are products, but many shelves are empty. Bread, they are preparing it, so now we are waiting for about 20 minutes. There are fruits, but with vegetables it's only onion, so if you don't eat onion, sorry.
So I'm heading to the bomb shelter again because there was an alert again.
Lviv has been such a touristic place, and it was always crowded with tourists from different countries, from all over Ukraine. And when the war began, it was just dead silent. And there were so many refugees, like IDPs everywhere. At the station, it was like a apocalypse. Everything seemed surreal at that time.
From February 24th until the end of March, Kyiv residents were afraid that the capital might be encircled.
At one point, Russians were sort of trying to swarm northern Kyiv, and I could sort of foresee a sort of really apocalyptic scenario.
There was this irrational feeling of not just not wanting to go, you know. And I have my parents, and my parents are stubborn as hell, so they were like, no, we're not leaving, we're dying at home.
Kyiv residents had to make a decision they were not prepared for.
The night was calm, but most probably we will have to leave Kyiv today.
I understood logically that it wasn't, but it felt like betrayal.
That was the most difficult decision ever. I cried when I was standing at the railway station.
And I remember the last day I was leaving, I was crying all day, like all day. I didn't stop crying for a second. And my parents were crying, and it was like,
I remember looking around the square, around the railway station, and thinking that maybe this is the last time I see it.
and it was like by far the worst thing that happened to me. I just remember there was a journalist, I don't remember from where. She called me a couple of times, and she kept saying, Darina, what will you do as a manager when Kyiv falls? I'm like, Kyiv won't fall. And she's like, no, but as a manager, what would you do? And I think I snapped at her, like, Kyiv won't f***ing fall. You know? My parents are okay, you know. A missile hit a building like 200 meters from them, like a week after I left. And I called them and said, like, well, would you now leave? And they're like, no, I mean, we'll leave when the windows shatter.
So on March 3rd, I returned back to Kyiv in hope to get my mom out of Bucha, and that was the day when Bucha was lost, unfortunately, at the time. So I stayed here waiting for the Green Corridor and calling every volunteer I know, everybody I could reach, to try to get my mom out, but it wasn't possible any longer. So I waited up until the Green Corridor was organized on March 9. Luckily, she was able to get out of Bucha safe and sound, but yeah, she spent about 10 days in the basement with little but no food, no electricity, no gas. It was early March and late February. It was cold. I can't complain because my mom is safe, and many people weren't able to get out of Bucha.
The bodies have eventually been dug out, and now the investigation has begun for war crimes.
Here in the town of Borodyanka, 40 kilometers northwest of Kyiv, State Emergency Service is working to clear debris left by Russian airstrikes, and in the hope of finding people alive. I'm a senior editor and I don't write stories, so technically I don't have to go and visit those places, but for me personally it was important to travel the country and to see what Russia did to Ukraine. That's why I was in Kyiv Oblast, I was in Borodyanka, I was in Mykolaiv, I was in Mykolaiv Oblast, I was Chernihiv, Sumy. I was in those regions because for me it's important to see the war. If I'm writing or editing or working in a news organization in Ukraine, I have to see what's happening on the ground.
I realized that part of my mission in this time will be talking about Ukraine abroad.
The Kyiv Independent is suddenly in the spotlight of the top international media, its staff members getting invited to speak at conferences around the world.
And suddenly there is a journalist calling from the Time magazine asking for an interview for a profile and then saying, "You're going to be on the cover," and I thought it was a prank. I was up until the magazine came out, I thought it was a prank. And it is very surreal to have to live through that while you're also effectively a victim of the war.
I've been at a few panels at this festival, and I hear, that there are lawsuits against journalists, and there are, pressure on journalists. There is problems with the lack of access to information. While in Ukraine, the biggest problem is that journalists are being killed by Russian missiles or shot or gunned down, targeted specifically. Their parents, their families, children are kidnapped to make sure that the journalists come out and they can be captured by Russians. So that's what's happening in Ukraine.
The stories of wars from our past seem more than distant. They often seem insane. They often seem like they were the result of a fatal mistake, of failed judgment, of rare coincidence that can never repeat itself. Surely we think that can't happen again. It's insane to think that it's even possible. Planes bombing schools and hospitals, armies invading other countries, soldiers committing genocide in the middle of Europe in the year 2022. Surely that all belongs in history books, right?
So I'm back home and everything stayed pretty much as I left it. So this is my apartment, and this is, I was sleeping in the corridor over here. You see, this is a big corridor. It does have two walls, just for the safety reasons, to sort of prevent the rocket. So the mess is here there is my fucking Christmas tree over here. Yeah, there is a Christmas tree. This is used to be my beloved rose. You see, it's still, does it say no? It even says I was gonna show the calendar that it says still February, it says even January. I feel like people just minding their own business.
Ukraine managed to withstand the aggression, but at a high cost.
Hi everyone, my name is Toma Istomin. I'm Deputy Chief Editor at the Kyiv Independent. I am here today to moderate a discussion with one and only our star defense reporter, Ilya Ponomarenko, who I'm sure most of you are familiar with.
Today, we are facing something that is very interesting and very intriguing even to us who follow the whole course of war 24/7, because Ukraine is attacking. It's taking our territory back, and not just Kherson Oblast as it was initially seen, but also in Kharkiv Oblast.
Kyiv Independent reporters traveled to the liberated areas to cover Russian atrocities.
I'm from Australia originally, from Sydney in Australia. I started with a language school here, then an internship, and the more I was here, the more I loved it. And I just felt I needed to be here when the full-scale invasion started, needed to do something, and that's how I found myself here. The most dangerous moment was definitely in October on the front line between Kharkiv Oblast and Luhansk Oblast. We came into a village that was basically in the gray zone. We just saw one lady come out of her house. We started talking to her, and and at that point we were targeted by artillery. I think a Russian drone saw our car.
Вони перед самим обідом так пуляли, так бабахкали. І от тут якась хата ще горіла, кажуть.
We quickly got in the car, drove away, but there were some more that landed very close as we were driving away. That was probably the most dangerous.
Deciding who goes on the front line can be difficult, because when you're authorizing a trip like that, you're effectively allowing the person to risk their life. And you're acting on very little information that is available to you. Like, I'm not a security specialist, I'm not even a water reporter. So I have to make these decisions about allowing somebody to go somewhere without really having full information. And it's a lot of responsibility and it's a lot of pressure to be under.
I won't be chasing such experiences again, but if it happens, it happens.
What's interesting is people never have to be assigned to go to the front line. They want to go to the front line, they volunteer.
This is the Kyiv Independent reporting from Kherson.
As you can see behind me, we have the Ukrainian flags on the monument in the main square of Kherson.
My name is Irina Matviyishin. I'm in the village of Chernobyevka, which is 10 kilometers away from Kherson.
I think it's partly just being, young and adventurous and brave, because that's what the team is. But then also I think they also just really driven by the mission and really want to do their best and to show the world what is happening, like, near the front line, in the liberated territories and so on.
In early October, Russia unleashed a new wave of aggression. On October 10th, Russia launched its first in a series of massive deadly attacks on energy infrastructure across Ukraine. The attacks that day also hit residential buildings, killing 19 civilians.
I was attending a conference in Paris, and I had a couple of free hours after that. And what do you do when you have 2 hours in Paris? Of course, I went to the Louvre. There was a huge crowd around me, of course. I'm standing looking at the Venus statue, and suddenly the news comes that there's another missile attack on Kyiv. I go in the corner, I try to get some mobile data to stay online and to read the news, and I started texting everybody I know, because there was not just on Kyiv, there was an attack on different cities. And I started texting, like, my mom to figure out that she's okay, my friends and colleagues in Kyiv, and they see that they have connectivity issues. They're saying, like, my internet's going down, my connection's going down, the lights went off, and so on. I don't think I've ever felt as lonely ever anywhere as I was standing in the corner of one of the main halls of the Louvre, surrounded by hundreds of tourists from all over the world. And I suddenly realized that I'm definitely the only one there who is in this moment trying to figure out whether her loved ones were killed by a missile attack.
Due to the severe damage to energy infrastructure caused by Russia's attacks, Ukrainians had to adapt to a life with constant power outages. They stocked up on candles and flashlights. The sound of power generators became the new soundtrack of Ukrainian cities.
Our team members, just like millions of Ukrainians, have been struggling with power outages, both emergency and scheduled ones, since October 10, since the very first large-scale attack that Russia launched on the energy system of Ukraine. And Russia has continued to repeat these attacks throughout this whole time, and our energy system suffers more and more. And normally, after a large-scale attack, all Ukrainian regions would experience some emergency blackouts. They would go without electricity for hours and hours, sometimes 10 hours in a row, sometimes more. Later after that, when our utility workers managed to restore some of the infrastructure that was damaged, normally we go back to scheduled blackouts. The main things that we bought are these stations that are pretty much your huge power banks. If you've ever used a power bank, you know how it works. So you basically charge it when you do have access to electricity, and then you use it to charge other devices. Another crucial part of our work at the moment is the Starlink, the satellite internet that we've been lucky to get for temporary usage.
Russian forces continue to regularly attack Ukrainian cities to this day, and the battles on the front line are as fierce as ever.
Вибухи 24 лютого нас оглушили. Відтоді ми не все чуємо і не всіх слухаємо. Нам казали, у вас немає інших варіантів, аніж здатися. Ми кажемо, у нас немає інших варіантів, аніж перемогти. Цей рік можна назвати роком втрат для України, для всієї Європи, для усього світу. Але це невірно. Ми не маємо так говорити. Ми нічого не втратили. У нас забрали. Україна не втратила синів і доньок. Їх забрали вбивці. Українці не втратили домівки. Їх знищили терористи. Ми не втратили свої землі. На них зайшли загарбники. Світ не втратив мир. Росія його зруйнувала. Цей рік поранив нас у серце. Ми виплакали усі сльози, прокричали усі молитви 311 днів. Про кожну хвилину нам є що сказати, але більшість слів зайві. Вони не потрібні. Не потрібні пояснення, прикраси. Потрібна тиша, щоб почути. Потрібні паузи, щоб усвідомити.
February 24th, 2023 marks a year of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. It's also the time when Ukraine is fighting off a renewed Russian offensive, and many Ukrainians again have to face the questions they faced in February 2022.
So the question I need answered in this, in this note is, if Kyiv is attacked, are you relocating or are you staying? If you're relocating, are you relocating? Do you want to be in Ukraine or do you want to be abroad? And do you need help with that? Do you want to use companies' help? That came, for those of you who don't remember, although it's over and here, that came very helpful last year, because when the morning of the 24th happened, we didn't have to ask everybody, like, where's everybody, because we knew that, we knew who's staying in Kyiv, we knew who's going. So please think about it and do it by the end of the day today, ideally.